And we're here with Marty Jourard, Stephen K. Peeples here, and it's the end of January 2023, 28th of January 2023, and we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of the Little Robbers sessions for the Motels' fourth studio album. And that was released later in the year, but wanted to kind of zero in on this particular record because it was a pivotal record in Motels history, and there was a lot on the line after two albums with Carter producing. The third album was with Val Garay producing, and that produced the band's big breakthrough. So Little Robbers was kind of the follow-up. So if you could set the stage for us and tell us what was happening in the months prior to Little Robbers and where the band was financially and physically and creatively leading into those sessions.
Well, it's a big question. The record that obviously put us on the international map, or at least, the US charts for sure, was All for One. And that was a record that started out being produced by Val Garay as Apocalypso. But what was really going on at the time was Tim McGovern, who was, the guitar player in the band and a very creative guy. Val, for those sessions, pretty much engineered them, even though he was the producer, and Tim was in charge of that. And that album eventually came out, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, as Apocalypso. This is the famous or infamous record that Capitol, we basically recorded it, and Val wouldn't let Capitol hear any of the mixes at all, nothing, until it was done. And then he brought them into Record One, which is where we recorded it in, studio. And he played it real loud. And this is all the bigwigs from Capitol. And they listened to it and they go, "Thank you very much." And they went back to Capitol and essentially told the band, "We'll put it out, but the marketing people are not real excited about this. It's all over the map. It's, it's very artsy." To me, it had amazing highs and crashing lows. It was not a great record. So then Tim was fired, and Val said, "Let's redo this. Let's do it my way." And his way was very slick, commercial, controlled, and, successful. He knew how to make a pop record. And it was a better record, All for One. Also, there was better material. We re-recorded only The Lonely, so it actually sounded like a single. And I had Take the L, which came about from that. So we toured around, we went to the various places in the world, and we came back and it's like, okay, we're going to make another record with Val. And at this point, I guess you could say Val Garay had a mandate as a producer, because he'd already proven himself with Kim Carnes, obviously, with Betty Davis Eyes. And that's why he started to work with us on All for One. So by the time Little Robbers came around, it was like, okay, let's do it the way Val does it, all the way. And that's what we did. And it started, I think it was, February. And we ended recording in August. We did it in a couple big sessions or sections where we had a break and some new material came about. So it was grueling.
Well, now the lineup was Martha, Guy Perry, Michael, Brian Glasscock, Scott Thurston, and yourself.
Yeah, it was and it wasn't.
There were additional personnel also.
Yes. Now, being a motel, and I'll say this in candidness because I am a motel, is the motel started out, when we were basically this little LA band, street band. None of us were professional musicians, or none of us were session musicians. And there was a very obvious membership of the band. It was the people on the record, the back of the cover. Now, as the music business, and you've been in the music business for a few years, as we've got deeper and deeper into it, the definition of a band got a little more amorphous. It always said the Motels. And you could also, even before we go past the first album, you could really say, without Martha Davis, what do you got? So you could pretty much say it's a Martha Davis album with some really good players and some other good songs coming in. So the people that played on All for One and Little Robbers included the band for sure, but it did not exclusively include the band. I played all the saxophone. I played all the keyboard that, the parts that I came up with. And there were additional people because Val's method, he didn't really see a band as this sacred unit. He said, let's make a pop record. And he had access to a lot of players. You could call them the Malibu Mafia. I don't think it was that particular set, but it's the idea that there's these LA session cats, just like the Wrecking Crew, I guess you could say, but, a little more SoCal specific. And he had access to these people. A lot of them played on the King Carnes' band, and they were very good players. I got to say, Steve Goldstein was great. Craig Hull played on it. Waddy Wachtel played on it. I'm not going to go through who played what, but they were on it as well. And then when we finished Little Robbers to tour it, we realized with that many keyboard parts and that much production value and all these layers, we couldn't replicate it live. So we auditioned players and we ended up with Scott Thurston, who could play guitar, he could play keyboard, and he could actually play some sax licks, which I bought him a saxophone. And when we played Little Robbers, the title track, was a harmony part that I'd overdubbed, and we'd do it live. It was pretty
Perfect.
funny.
Yeah. Well, so you were talking about when we were exchanging messages, you were talking about the differences of working with three different producers, the three different producers that you primarily worked with. There was Carter, and there was Val Garay, and then
Richie Zito.
Yeah. So, well, going back to Little Robbers, what did you guys think about the finished product? Did you think it was as strong as the predecessor, as All for One?
It was and it wasn't. I mean, remember, I'm an unreliable. I'm not a neutral party here.
That's
but you're asking me, so that's.
I'm asking you. Yes.
No. I liked All for One better. To me, All for One, and you can't argue taste. It was a better record. I mean, first of all, I had Take the L on it, so what do you expect me to say? It was a turntable hit, and we still play to this day every show, which is nice. But this is really describing the music business of the '80s, which we were one of many bands that were making records in the '80s. By the time this album came out, there were many more people making the soup, so to speak. You had songs that were written by Bernie Taupin and Martha Davis. There was some songs where she wrote with another bass player. She wrote with Steve Goldstein, Suddenly Last Summer. Her and Steve Goldstein wrote that. He was a guy from, Val Garay's group of players. I listen to this record now, and to me, the best sounding track we've ever recorded is Suddenly Last Summer. It just
you mentioned that. And why is that? What is it about that, the sound of it, that is so superior?
Well, it's sort of like listening to Everly Brothers tracks from when they first started up to the end, or like Chet Atkins. The technology and the ability to record this particular person got better and better. And there wasn't that much difference in gear between All for One and Little Robbers, but Val Garay knew how to get sound on tape. He knew how to record bass and drums. He certainly did with All for One, but there was something magical, and I use that term, guardedly. I don't throw that around, about how that track was born, that song, and how it was recorded, and the keyboard playing on it, which frankly I had very little to do with. That was Steve Goldstein. And we still are trying to figure out how to get that sound live, because it's really about 4 different synthesizers plus orchestral bells and I don't know what else, but it just jumps out of the speakers. And the way her voice works, I think every now and then a track just works. It just works perfectly. Also, by then he knew that his methods were successful, and he had a very formulaic way, Val Garay, of creating a track. And I mean, I can go into it briefly if you want, but it's one of many ways to make.
Yes, please. That would be very illustrative, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Let me preface it by saying there's about 9 million ways to make a record. Okay?
That's a given. That's a given. Yes.
And these 9 million or whatever are equally successful depending on the time and the place and the artist. So there's nothing particularly, saying that this is the only way to make records, because I've made them many different ways. What Val would do, and I've taken a lot of these ideas, and I don't think he invented them, but his MO was this. First, you decide you like the song, and it's a song. Then you figure out the arrangement, verse, chorus, bridge, this is standard stuff. And Martha is very good at doing that. She doesn't need a lot of help to write a song, a melody, or an arrangement. But when it comes to the actual arranging of the instruments, the first thing you had to figure out is what key are we going to sing it in? And there's 12 different choices. And a singer every song has an ideal key for that singer's voice and that song and that melody range. That's number one. Number two is there's an ideal tempo for a song. And I mean a difference between 68 beats per minute and 67 beats per minute. So Val would sit there with, I think it was a stopwatch, and go, let's try it at 67, or he'd have a metronome. Okay, now let's try it at 69. Now let's try it at 80. Oh, that's too fast. That's too slow. This is the right tempo. And you know when it is because of the rate that somebody sings syllables. And the key, of course, is critical too, because All for One, for example, I'm sorry, Only the Lonely was in G, Martha wrote it in G, which is very normal for a guitar player to write in G. For Only the Lonely, Val bumped it up a half a step to A flat, which gave a little more edge to the voice. So that's that's the first things you figure out is tempo and key. Then it comes down to the way Val did it. We're going to go through every part, starting with the bass drum. And what's the bass drum playing on the intro, the verse, the chorus, the bridge, the lead, the outro? You straighten that out and go, what's the snare drum going to do all the way through the song? Does it double up on the verse, the chorus? Does it go to halftime here? Then the hi-hat. Where do we do cymbals? Once you straighten that out, he added the bass. The bass plays this thing. When he did that, he added rhythm guitar or piano. Then you added something else. Finally, you would add the voice. And it was basically a very methodical method. And
brick by brick.
Yeah. And it got down to where when we play Suddenly Last Summer on stage, which we of course do, the drummer had to listen to the drum machine on the track, because there's some other stuff like, cymbal swells with tom-tom things. And in order to play that, you go doom, doom, bop, doom, doom, ba-da-da-da, like a drum machine. And the correct part for the drummer to play when we play this live is for him to go doom, bop, doom, ba-da-da, doom, doom, bop, doom, doom, bop, doom, doom, bop, doom, doom, ba-da-da, just like a machine, because it was a machine. So you put it all together, and it's all intended to present the vocal in the most attractive way possible, no matter who's playing what, or who wants to, what they think the idea is. The producer comes up with these ideas, for better or worse, or the band does, and either it sounds like a hit or it doesn't. But that song, Martha played me the demo on the phone at like 3 a.m. She called me up. They must have been drinking a lot of coffee. And she goes, listen to this. I'm hearing ba-da-da-da-da-da. I go, it's a hit. Even on the telephone, it's a hit. Goodbye. And it was a hit. It's just one of those songs, they come along. It's haunting. It's a beautiful song.
It is. And it is sonically just delicious.
Yeah, it's the best. I mean, now for me to pick apart Little Robbers, I could do it song by song. What I hear now is a couple faux reggae songs, a lot of Simmons electronic digital drums, a lot of Sinair, and some samples like Monday Shutdown that has like, typewriter sample. Back then there's an emulator, and this guy came in with a whole bunch of floppy disks. Let me see what else. I mean,
Well, let's talk about it. It was 1983.
Yes.
MTV was busting out everywhere. New wave or punk and new wave had kind of matured, if you will. And I think you guys, the Motels represented that maturation in a way. And so there was a lot of different instrumentation going on in 83, as opposed to back in 76 or 77, when it was still pretty much a guitar keyboards or guitar sax keyboards kind of thing. Now you're bringing in all kinds of different effects and but that was part of the era, and also working with Val Garay, who knew how to tap into that kind of thing technically.
Mm-hmm. Well, the producer became a star in the 80s. When you listen to a Jeff Lynne record, producing, you go, oh, Jeff Lynne produced that. You listen to, I won't say it with a Val Garay record, but the producer was a huge part of the deal, whereas before, maybe not so. I mean, I don't think anybody produced Ray Charles. They just recorded Ray Charles. So the main things in my mind are synthesizers and synthesizers. That is the sound of new wave, starting in 79, Gary Newman, Thomas Dolby. I mean, we just sucked that up. We had the Prophet synthesizer, the Prophet 5, Betty Davis eyes, that's a Prophet 5. And then drum machines. Everybody cut demos with drum machines. The Boys of Summer. When Henley heard the demo of that, which was Mike Campbell with a Lynn drum machine, he insisted when they cut the track that he took not just a Lynn drum machine, but that one with that program and make the Don Henley track, because Mike Campbell wrote the music to that.
I remember seeing a credit somewhere, guitar so-and-so, bass so-and-so, drums Lynn.
Yeah, Roger Lynn. Yeah, he was a really neat guy. So those were the sounds that were going on at the time. And in my ears, the 80s, that approach just got more and more bombastic, until by the time we were cutting Shock and other people were cutting records, it was like everything needs to be louder than everything else. More is definitely more. And it just started out from like our first album, which was pretty much no production value whatsoever.
A lot more minimalist.
Well, I would say none, I mean, it's been criticized for that, but I go, well, listen to the songs, it doesn't sound dated. It sounds very clean, like spring water. I listen to Little Robbers. I go, oh, listen to that, that sim drum going, pew, pew, pew. It got more and more overblown, the production value in the 80s, until you ended up with Heart doing Never, just as big as possible. And I didn't grow up with that music in North Florida, and I didn't listen to that music. I listened to Traffic, and I listened to Jimmy Reed or like Howlin' Wolf. That's about me. So it just that was the scene. We were very much of the moment of 80s pop music, LA recording, synthesizers. So whatever it is, we were there at that moment in LA. It was very much what was going on.
That's for sure.
We weren't outliers, is my point,
Oh, we're starting to do a track by track, so let's pick that up.
Okay.
You were talking because you open it up. I hear synthesizers and drum machines and the other stuff that was going on sonically. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about each track, that would be great.
Okay. Now,
to the extent that you have any comments about them.
Yeah, I do. Remember, opinions are like elbows. Everybody has at least two.
Yes, yes.
My opinions. Okay, where do we go from here? Nothing Sacred. That's the first track. and it has this weird little synth sound that I got. I was trying to sound like an Arabic, sax, this little weird sound. Well, we're recording that. This is fairly amusing. And Matt Dillon comes to the studio with his whole entourage of agents and publicists, and Matt Dillon, the actor.
Yeah.
And he wanted to do some movie with Martha, some sci-fi movie he was pitching, or he I don't know, it never happened. But he showed up and he was extremely cool, Matt Dillon. I mean, he looked like Matt Dillon. And he goes, yeah, I really like the band. I was in Paris, in a hotel room late at night, and I turned on the radio and I heard the song Total Control, and it just totally freaked me out. I mean, I'm paraphrasing him, but he heard it and he was just blown away. Just, said, I like the sax, I like the voice. So he came in and he's talking to her, and I'm going, wow, it's Matt Dillon. And they're playing back this, we're rehearsing that song. And he goes, what is that sound? I go, oh, it's just the synth sound. So I was playing him the sound as on a memory moog. He thought it was so cool. I was trying to make it sound like don't, like.
Right.
So that was a rocker. And then, the end of it, we've got this money lick. It's got a keyboard lick that's it's from another song. Now, according to Val and other people, you don't start with the hit. The opening track should be a real barn burner. And All for One was the same way. It starts out with, Mission of Mercy. So
Right.
The second track is Suddenly Last Summer, and there it is. We've talked about it. It's beautiful. It's just a beautiful track. I Love You is a nice play on words. I love you. I love you. As you knew. It's reggae. Martha wrote it with her former boyfriend, Kevin McCormick. I would say it's, an inoffensive reggae type song about love. Obviously, I played keyboard on that. Trust Me. That to me is a real sarcastic song, It's the old LA thing. Trust me.
Yeah, trust me.
You're
with a big cigar. Yeah.
The check is in the mail. And because there's a lot of that vibe going on in LA at the time, the whole thing, it's like, hey, it's been a slice of heaven, but I got to run. Irony was king in the music biz and probably the movie business too.
Too hip, gotta go.
Huh? Yeah.
Too hip, gotta go.
You've got to go. Yeah. And, I don't live in LA anymore. I live up here. Monday Shut Down. She wrote that with Steve Goldstein. Now, Steve died, sadly, we never really knew about it. He was about my age, an extremely talented all around guy. In fact, I was jealous of him because he was in the hierarchy. Like there was him, and then I was this guy that's in the band, but like, your sax playing's good. Don't worry about that. But Steve had it covered. So it's a song of, it's kind of like working 9 to 5, it's all about going to work and how hard it is.
Right.
That thus ends side 1. Side 2, Remember the Nights. Okay, this is where I get a little excited. I had a keyboard called a memory moog, which is a moog that actually didn't blow up. It was slightly digital, and it had a cello sample on it. And so I was screwing around at record 1 at this side, room. And I was going, dun 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 dun. I was going, oh, this is like Alberti bass. This is like a Bach thing in your left hand, which is hilarious because I've never taken any classical lessons, but I just like the sound of it. Val walks in, and we're working on this song. I guess it had chords, and he goes, "What is that?" I go, "I'm just coming up with this figure for Remember the Nights." He goes, "Well, let's do it." So if you listen to that. That's the main thing. And I took a sax solo on that I'm quite proud of because I had about 8 bars to blow my nose, and it came out great. And I was very happy. I would say of all the songs on this record, Remember the Nights, I came up with the main hook of the keyboard, and I came up with the sax solo, and there's an outro. Now we played 2 songs when we did Saturday Night Live. We played Suddenly Last Summer and Remember the Nights. And I remember playing in New York City on Saturday Night Live as sax and going, I'd heard the sax player in Saturday Night Live band for years, and the Tonight Show. And I go, if you play sax in New York City, you better play good and don't squeak. So
Yeah.
I told, well, but it was a huge
Unless you
moment.
intend to do it, yes.
Yeah, and never intended, yeah. So those are my feelings, which are very self-serving but accurate about that song.
Well, it was the second single. I mean, the first one was #1 album rock hit and a top 10 pop single. And so that was the follow-up
Yeah.
later on in the year.
It also had a really cool video.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the videos, because Motels were among the first to cut videos for their singles. And they were pretty instrumental, you should pardon the pun, in the Motels the spread of popularity beyond just the LA clubs. It had a lot to do with, I mean, touring, yes, but MTV videos really kind of blanketed the world in a way that you couldn't do personally.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we were booked for a tour, to play some nice clubs around the US before Only the Lonely hit the top 10. And the Only the Lonely video, of course, was this beautiful video by Russell McKahey. And he also did one for Take the L like 2 days later. I think the budget for both of those was 30 grand. I mean, that guy knew what he was doing. This is the first year of MTV, 1982. So by the time we do this club tour, not only do we have a top 10, but like we got this video that everybody with a TV and cable has seen. And this every show was sold out. And I went, wow, are they really lining up for us? Because, that just took it to everywhere. The video for Suddenly last summer, John Alonzo was a friend of Val Garay's, because Val grew up in Hollywood, and John Alonzo was a cameraman for Chinatown, and you could look him up. So
yeah,
he's
shot. Heavyweight. He's heavyweight.
He was a heavyweight. He had his own camera. When he went to rent it, said John Alonzo on it. It was his. So we went to Santa Barbara to cut that, and it was Bobby Carradine was Martha's love interest while they're making out on the beach and everything. And it kind of looked like a Hallmark, looked like a romance novel. They made it that way. And we got to meet John Carradine, and obviously Bobby Carradine was there. And it was funny because when we were hanging out there at some house, we were on a street that's SOLA Street in Santa Barbara, Sola Street. I go, it's So LA Street. So that video came out, and that was a huge hit. And then Remember the Nights, I think that was the one in Chinatown, where we're running around in Chinatown, and there's a David Bowie tribute to it, a kind of a China girl thing. And I played sax on that. That was, I don't remember who did that one, but that was done fairly quickly, in Chinatown, and it was a follow-up. It wasn't the same director and shooter of Suddenly, but those videos were a big deal. They did so much heavy lifting. I mean, it's night and day what MTV did. This is when all they did was play video, music videos,
right
for the Real World and whatever they are now.
Yeah, I think there was a period even at the very outset of MTV where they didn't really have hosts. It was just video after video after video, and then the hosts and personalities kind of came into the picture, and then the shows.
Well, Martha Davis
shows.
Yeah, all those guys. In fact, we met them on an 80s cruise. A lot of them, I forget their names now, but Mark Goodman, Nina Blackwood, they were on this 80s cruise.
Right.
Well, the coolest thing about MTV is if they decided to go 24 hours and they didn't have enough content from America, because America didn't do videos. So they ended up taking anything they could from Europe. So you're looking at Gary Newman, Duran Duran, Thomas Dolby, Ultravox. I mean, and I wouldn't have heard these songs if I hadn't had MTV. And I'm going, Ultravox, Vienna, like, whoa, this is some wild music, So all this European music came over to America through MTV because MTV needed content, and there it was. Now, obviously, we caught up. Suddenly America was cranking out videos. But at the beginning, the first year or two, there was some music you never would have heard, or artists you never would have heard of, if MTV didn't need, bring us anything. It happened to be some extremely hip, edgy music.
Right. But you got to feed the monster, and fortunately, the food was good. There
Oh,
were
yeah.
very the artists that you mentioned were quite influential at the time, you know, on young musicians coming up.
Yes. And I remember, obviously I remember, I wouldn't be saying this now. When we were cutting the first album with Carter, we were sitting around reading Billboard. He was reading it in the studio. He's going, you know, Carter, he had this funny voice. Just listen to the names of these international, you know, these hits over in England. Our Friends Electric question mark by Gary Newman and Tubeway Army. It's like, you know, Our Friends Electric, like there's no American song called Our Friends Electric. We were just astounded at how creative the continental music was, you know, and I could name more, but I just remember that one moment.
I have to quick sidebar inject here. Carter's office. You remember Carter's office?
Yeah, well, we need to tell the viewers, John Carter was pretty much a legendary producer and songwriter character in pop music.
Strawberry Alarm Clock.
Yeah, he co-wrote Incense and Peppermints, and there's this hilarious marijuana song called Acapulco Gold that nobody knew it was what Acapulco Gold was. And when I was a kid in Gainesville, Florida, we heard this song. And it was funny because it's me and Martha took a honeymoon under the border beneath the silvery moon. Acapulco Gold for everyone. And we go, that's a song about marijuana. And I didn't know till I met Carter and talked to him years later. Oh, I co-wrote that. And I look on it and it says Carter. So Carter was just an eccentric, a very interesting guy, and he produced our first two albums. And in his office, for some reason, he had Charlie Watts's gold record for Black and Blue album. He had a two-headed cow, a calf, like a Ripley's Believe It or Not calf. And he had the coolest houses I've ever been in. He was a wonderful guy. I loved him. And, you know, I was so sorry when he passed away, but I knew him very well, and he was warm, and he knew how to work with artists. I mean,
he was a funny guy. He was one of when I worked there, he was one of the guys that I used to like to hang out with. I would go sit in his office just to absorb the visuals, yeah. You know, which also he had like 2-inch tape strewn all over the place, kind of wrapped around, you know, everything.
That's true.
This is a very, very funny guy, and his office was right outside Rupert Perry's office. And they had a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I remember Rupert. Well, Carter would do two things. He would sit there and we cut a track, and he'd be, you know, in the mixing area, and we'd be in the room, and we cut and we cut. And if he didn't like it, the track, he'd go, Pasadena.
Yeah.
Meaning I'd pass. And if he did like it, if like the performance, he'd go, leader, which meant the engineer to like cut some, you know, 10 feet of blank leader,
white tape. Put some white tape in there.
We want to know where that was. And, you know, he was also instrumental, pardon the pun, in bringing Tina Turner back from, you know, obscurity. Yeah. And he produced the title track, Private Dancer, that has Jeff Beck on it. Carter was great. And if it wasn't for Carter, we would have never been signed to Capitol. So, you know, He's a wonderful man.
Well, you know, we were at Remember the Nights, so
yeah.
Little Robbers, the title track. We've got about 4 minutes left.
Okay. I asked Martha, why did you write Little Robbers? I mean, I know we got our gear stolen, you know, one New Year's Eve. She goes, I don't remember, but it was about being ripped off. I think she was ripped off. So we did a Little Robbers, and I think I came up with the sax riff. That thing. It's just about being ripped off. Everybody can relate to that.
Yeah.
I like that song. Into the Heartland, Bernie Taupin had these lyrics, and Martha took those and put music to it. So that was interesting because, you know, Bernie Taupin wrote the lyrics for Elton John.
Right.
And at this point in the sessions, now that we were, quote, well known, Bette Midler would show up and hang out, you know, just to watch. And Carole King would hang out. She pitched a song to us we didn't record. Okay, now we go to Tables Turn. Michael Goodrow, the bass player, co-wrote that with Martha, and it's just a beautiful song. It's just a beautiful song about romance. And I took a sax solo on that, and I was inspired by the song. I'm inspired to, I can't play a great sax solo on a bad song. I cannot do it. So that was a good song, and I really worked on it. And I remember the song called "Go Away, Little Girl" when I was a kid, you know.
Right.
And so the last lick I play on the sax is basically "Go away, little girl." Maybe you'll hear it.
Right.
Well, last song, "Footsteps." That was a three-way: Martha Davis, Steve Goldstein, and Bill Ray. I don't know who Bill Ray is. It's another, to me, faux reggae song. Reggae was very hot, watching the Detectives, you know, UB40, Bob Marley. And it's a nice sort of okay song to end the record on. The main point of this record was, to me, "Suddenly Last Summer" and "Remember the Nights." And if you've got two, you know, very well received songs, I consider that a successful album.
Well, I think it's testament to that you're still playing those songs in motel sets to this day.
We are. We're playing. Yeah.
Out of all the other things that you could be playing, you know, those are among the most lasting, the most requested.
Mm-hmm. Well, any band should play their hits, you know. So we play "Suddenly Last Summer" and "Only the Lonely." We play "Take the L." We sometimes play "Remember the Nights." I did that on this tour where we had a backing band, and Greg Hawkes, of all people, was in the band. This is when we did this Go-Go's replay tour, and it was me and Martha with the backing band. And I found myself in the odd situation of teaching Greg Hawkes, who I would say is a hero of mine, and he's a good friend now.
Right.
Teaching him how to play "Only the Lonely" because I have to play sax, and I'm teaching him how to play "Remember the Nights," and it's Greg Hawkes. It's like me showing Jeff Beck how to play something. You know?
Yeah, right.
If I was a guitar player.
Cars keyboardist for you folks who may not remember who Greg Hawkes is.
Well, Greg Hawkes was a keyboard player in the Cars, and he was.
What did I just say?
Yeah.
Didn't I just say the Cars?
Oh, I thought you said guitar. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You can delete that.
I'll take the marbles out of my mouth.
No, it's my hearing.
Anyway, Marty's great talking to you, and I really appreciate all of the flashbacks to this particular album. And you know, congratulations on the anniversary, and carry on.
Thank you. Great talking to you.
Best to you and Martha.
Thanks. Take it easy, y'all.